In a world where the history exam needs to be passed, students line up, sitting outside of a cramped, heated room. Inside, they hear the voices, screams, and cries of the students that went in before them. The lecturers close the door as a weepy British and American Studies student exits the building. Now it's your turn. You have to enter the room. The histories exam, coming soon to a lecture hall near you. I don't know where that came from. I was just imagining, I don't know if this happens to you, but when you're waiting in front of the PM4 exam room for that particular day, you see a student that you know and you're about to examine, and you're like, oh, you're going to be fine. This is going to be great. And just to contradict that sentiment, you hear from inside the room some pretty harsh, I don't know, emotional noises, whatever direction those might take. And somebody opens the door with tears in their eyes and kind of storms down the hallway, not saying a word to the person that you were just trying to comfort. Has this ever happened to you?
Actually, no, because the tears and everything, yes, but I find that they do look after each other.
Okay.
I find that hardly anyone, I mean, sometimes there are tears of relief, and then sometimes there are tears of despair.
Sure.
But in each case, it's likely that there will be conversation. I mean, sometimes people bring friends, and
right.
What I feel is there is a sort of trench solidarity kind of going on with the candidates.
I do see that as well. But then there are those people that, I don't know, the students that aren't friends with the person before or after them. It's just like they feel maybe isolated and alone, and they just kind of storm right off like, oh my God, I have to take this test again.
Yeah.
This is making this sound so much more relaxing as an exam, isn't it?
I mean, I'm good. I already finished PM4, so I'm just like leaning back, relaxing.
But come on, it's not actually that. I feel it's the hype, isn't it? It's just
says the doctor
hype
and another doctor.
No, but it's true.
Yeah, it is. It's just different. It isn't harder.
So I found and still find BM3 way harder. Maybe because I also enjoyed studying for a PM. It's PM2? No, BM.
It's PM4. Sorry, now I'm stumbling. It's PM4 in the 2017 FSBs.
And for others, it's
the Profile 2 module in the 2022 FSBs.
Okay. I don't know. I had a study group, which I was really advised to participate in by lecturers, get a study group, do it. And it helped a lot. I don't think I could have succeeded this well without a study group.
Okay.
And we all were like really prepared, and we went in scared because everyone said like, oh, you need like 2 semesters just to prepare for this one exam, or like 1 semester of full focus on these like 3 classes. You really have to grind your teeth together and like go through it, and then it's fine. It's just talk.
Fair enough. So, Kate, I don't know how you're going to cut all this together, because right now I'm going to say, greetings, persons of quality, and welcome back to Anglisten Assemble today with, as always, my compatriot, Leon. How you doing, Leon?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Pretty good. It's a little warm in the recording studio today. And, of course, we've got our newest addition, who is now our permanent member, Kate. How you doing, Kate?
Good. Alive. Well, good.
Nice.
The usual.
The usual.
Hopefully.
I mean, if you can say good as the usual, hats off. More power to you. Mm-hmm. And our very special guest here today, we've got Angela Stock.
Whee! Hi.
And we're going to be talking today first about our lovely PM4/Profile 2 module, The Histories. Yay. And of course, Angela, you know quite a bit about this, as it's the module that's under your supervision.
Yeah, and I love it. I mean, it's mine. It's my Precious. Yeah, it's my precious, exactly. I was so scared in the last Reakkreditierung that Ellen Grünkenmeyer was going to want to abolish it or something.
Oh.
And I think she had sort of ideas about modifying it, but we nipped those in the bud
Okay.
pretty quickly. I think she wanted it sort of to be more literary, even then, and of course I completely resisted that. But yeah, it's a controversial thing. I realize that.
What is like as someone who has no idea why? What is so controversial about this?
Well, let me take a detour here. I made my academic writing class write writing exercise. Could literary studies be taught equally well with popular fiction like young adult and fantasy? Does it have to be the classics?
Yes.
And the vast majority says yes. You don't need. It's doubly difficult to use these difficult texts, Jane Austen, to teach literary analysis. Why not do it with easier texts that are, but basically texts that we like more. And I think part of this is why do we teach old stuff at all? Is that really necessary? And that applies to fiction, of course, or to literature. Why do Shakespeare? Even the Land doesn't make the teaching of Shakespeare mandatory anymore.
That's pretty recent, though, right?
Yeah, that's pretty recent. But then on top of that, it's like history. That's not even literary history. That's just history. Surely that's not necessary. Surely, if you want to do history, you can study history. But this is Anglistic. Why should we do that? All that old stuff. And then, of course, this expectation that they remember stuff in seminars that they do afterwards, which is crazy idea.
But where does this stuff notion come from? That I've never heard of this, and it sounds so weird because I never questioned this.
No, but you look at schools, like history license courses are fewer and fewer. Just history is so popular outside of education. Museums and sort of Disneyfied theme parks and stately homes and all the rest of it. But within education, it's getting less and less popular. And I'm, to be honest, quite divided about this. I'm not sure. I'm at a point where I feel, okay, if I have to teach literary studies with Twilight, so be it. It's sort of.
Yeah, I think I would nix Twilight maybe, but I get the idea.
Know what I mean?
Yeah.
13 Reasons to Drown Myself or something. Whatever. I don't know.
I think we have to provide a trigger warning for that.
Bridgerton.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fair. Although I see exactly what you're saying. It's probably a whole lot easier to teach with stories that are relatable. Characters who are more relatable.
Well, you
perhaps.
mean my father's ghost says he was murdered by my uncle and I'm supposed to now kill my uncle? That's not relatable? Come on.
Well, I mean, if you live in Denmark, it's probably still pretty relatable, I guess. But
or, I love B, B loves C, D loves... completely relatable, you would have thought.
Oh, that's, I feel, still relatable.
Yeah.
I think we lose people at the language level with... Midsummer or something else. Shakespearean, that is to say. I even remember bachelor's level American college courses doing Shakespeare like with it was like reading with subtitles, so you had the translation right next to it.
No sweat Shakespeare.
There you go.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And so, yeah, I felt like that was part of the draw. It was kind of fun to learn this separate language, but at the same time, I can see where people would go, I'd rather not. So as far as the PM4/Profile 2 module goes, saved, that's good. We've got that much. And I've heard you self-describe your British history course as the good parts version of British history.
The good parts? I call it British history for teachers and tourists.
Oh, teachers and tourists. Okay.
But the irony is that there are quite a lot of history students who obviously then, go for the history bits rather than the literature bits, who really like it because it's this very sort of ereignisgeschichtliche kind of survey that in the history department they spit on, because that's amateur. And I do that with pictures and with Blackadder and all the rest of it. So they find that quite enjoyable, probably because they thought this is what it's going to be like to study history, and then it isn't. It's Luhmann and Koselleck and all that difficult stuff. So no, it's not. I try to make it fun. But there are names and dates, so there's no way around that.
For sure. And I mean, especially in British history and the matchup with the other courses in that module, like especially the mandatory, so history of the English language, there's lots of dates and, events that people have to kind of commit to memory.
And also, I think everyone, lots of people who study Anglistic don't realize that it's literary studies. And they think it's sort of language something. But they nonetheless come to university having read fiction. But I think lots of people come to university, particularly if they don't study history, about Anglistic, and they really have very, very little idea of British history or American history. And then to be deluged with all the material and not to have a grid or a pattern or a sort of a context where you can stick all these additional facts into, I think that's really hard. It's like me going to hear a chemistry lecture or something. It's like I come with zilch, basically. Very, 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 very little. And now make sense of all this material. And it's just, that's hard.
I agree, as someone who's like a tutor for like these first semester students in the Einführungstage, like one of the first people that interact with these students on like a semi-academic level. I hear stories where I'm like, I don't know if this is something you would like, because they come in and say like, yeah, I don't really like reading. Can I go through this without reading? Yeah. I don't like presenting. I don't like history. I don't like literature. I'm like, this is not just you speak English to us about Twilight or whatever you like. This is reading literature, reading academic texts, talking about it, presenting, and learning about history and other stuff. This is not just pick and choose, right?
Yeah, it's very difficult to tell students before they enroll what it means to study a given subject. And those, I've been involved in these campus talks and these Schnupperstudium thing, whatever, where you give a sort of mini lecture for 11th graders or something. But
yeah, I have the info weeks coming up in June, where I'll be essentially doing that. I mean, there was a point in time where it was live. Corona, it went to online Zoom kind of meetings. And I've continued with that because they wanted it to be hybrid initially, and I like to show a video, something that we can actually work with, and then let's analyze what we just saw together and give them an idea of what's going on aside from describing, yes, there's language practice, but mainly we're doing literary studies, cultural studies, and linguistics. Do you like those things? Or education, to be fair, if it's a Lehramt student. So, or education. So do you like those things, though? And if the answer is no, buyer beware.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I didn't know all that when I enrolled, actually. Because it was more of a spontaneous decision of like, oh, they do literary studies, they do Shakespeare, how fun, let's enroll. But then there was linguistics. And it kind of hit me hard. But now I like it, actually, because now that I studied for my PM3 exam and I passed my exam, I understand the world a little bit more. Just a little bit, a tiny bit, but still.
Yeah, I didn't. And I think the students not knowing what they're getting into is also partially on the schools, because schools don't really tell you about what it is going to be when you study something. There's not saying the school should do this in class, but when I was in school, there were extracurricular informatory meetings or something with students explaining what you do in their related subjects. This is, I think, very rare and very occasionally. So students don't really know what it's going to be like to study English or PE or chemistry or anything. I mean, with sciences it might be easier, but anything literary, I'm studying philosophy, English, and literature, and I had no idea what any of those three is going to be like. So no one told me.
And do you have any regrets, Leo?
Yes and no. It's not what I expected it to be, but I do like most of what I am doing.
Okay, fair enough. Well, let's laser focus that now onto your own PM4 experience. So,
Brian trying to keep us on track.
Yeah.
I got to do something. I got to earn my money somehow. So yeah, how was it when you were going in? You said you had a study group.
Yeah, I had a study group which I met regularly.
And what were the 3 courses that you took out of the 5?
I took the American route.
That is a very respectable choice.
As someone who has family in Britain who was not happy about this, I took the American route, and because most of my study group wanted to do the American route, and it was just fitting into the semester because it was coincidentally the American semester.
So it was summer.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we met, I think, semi-regularly and near the end way more often until we had like a 2 or 3 crunch weekends where we met like multiple times a day. And we also, which is the most important part, we forced each other to go to every single lecture.
Oh.
And we forced each other to sit in the front row.
Nice.
Where we had to pay attention. No games on the tablet, no book, no cell phone. We had to pay attention. And it was so helpful to actually just be there and listen, because I realized, hey, I don't know this, but I don't feel uncomfortable asking, because I show that I am willing to learn, so I don't feel bad about asking something I don't understand.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that led to all of us passing pretty well. Not perfectly, but most of us pretty darn well.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really helpful. So if for anyone that's going to do PM2 or PM4, get a study group. It's the best thing ever. The history module. Get a study group. You don't have to meet every single day or like once a week at first, but as long as you motivate each other, it's going to help you a lot.
And it doesn't even matter if it's a group of people who say we want to do really well and sort of spur each other on. That can work really well if you're all ambitious. But equally, when I did my A level history, a friend of mine were revising together, and she just needed to pass. I mean, she was close to just failing her A levels, and I was a bit more ambitious. But we had a sort of tutee kind of situation, which was also brilliant for me, because I had to, talk to her and explain it to her and all the rest of it. And we, you just have to agree on what each member wants, and then.
That's how I passed PM3, actually.
I know.
Yeah, well,
At first, I just wanted to pass, and then we realized everyone in the group had their own like speciality. Like I was really good at American history, another person was really good at American literature, 2 people were really good at hotel. So we just had time blocks where everyone became the teacher and explained what they were good at and like what they know, and others could ask questions. And through these interactions, you also learn how to explain those things. Because if you're the expert, if you have to explain what is the Great Vowel Shift, when was the Norman invasion, what did it do, then through those points, you learn how to explain it in the exam. So if you get asked the questions about the lecture, you have the answer.
1066.
Yeah, 1066.
John Adams.
John Adams is a wonderful answer. Yeah, see, Kate, you prepped some questions, and it's right on here. When was the Norman invasion is one of the questions that you prepared?
It wasn't me.
Okay.
It was me!
Okay. Why on earth did you decide to ask that question?
Because usually when you're like a student in those classes, there are like a couple of questions, like should I say, like you have to know these answers. Those are like very important.
The Great Vowel Shift.
Like the Great Vowel Shift. Like if you like for hotel, there was like the rule: if you know those 3 points, one of them being the Great Vowel Shift, you're gonna at least semi-pass to pass. So know what the Great Vowel Shift is, when it happened, what were the causes, and what did it do? Can you explain like what moved to where? And this is definitely going to be one of those questions. Or like, what was the Norman invasion? Who did it? Why? What were the results of it? And this is definitely going to be one of those questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I don't feel like I have those questions in the American history bit. Like, there's not one thing
John Adams.
Well, there's John Adams, but John Brown is the one that I harp on
that's
so much.
true. Yeah,
I mean,
that's true.
I love John
Brown.
Adams. I love me some John Adams. And Paul Giamatti playing John Adams in the HBO Adams series. Wonderful.
We had this phase when the HBO thing came out, and Marilyn was watching it, and I was watching it, and the answer to everything was John Adams. So that's sort of where that came from. Anyway, sorry.
No, that's fair, and I think it's good. But John Brown, it tends to be something that I try to get to as like the last question of my exam.
I mean, we talked about, I think, was it Dred Scott or something?
Oh, we could have talked about Dred Scott for sure. There's lots of nice, I don't know, I think nice is maybe the wrong adjective when talking about the abolition of slavery. But there are really important, I guess, stories, but they make good stories, and Dred Scott's story is phenomenally both interesting from, the ground up, but the final result of his story is just heartbreaking. So it alone would make a wonderful movie.
Yeah, it was one of those questions I think I got wrong.
Okay.
Where it's like, after Dred Scott, were there any free Black Americans in America? And I was like, yeah.
There were free.
I was
Black
like, no.
Americans.
I said no, legally no. And you're like, you sure? And I was like, yeah, I'm doubling down. Yes, I'm sure.
Well, when you ask like that, I'll just stick to my guns. Perhaps not the best philosophy, but okay, fair enough. I mean, you got 7 minutes. And I mean, we've been talking around it, but
Can I just say the
Please.
7 minutes? Because I have sort of two pet peeves about this, that people say, they'll keep asking, do we have to know all this? And I said, think. You have 7 minutes in the whole exam. I'm going to talk to you for 90 minutes, give or take, for 13 weeks. Of course you don't have to know everything. You have to filter. Your task is to filter it down to 7 minutes. And obviously you don't know which 7 minutes you'll be required to produce. But you have to, that's your main task, the filtering. Of course you don't have to know everything. That's the one pet peeve. And the other one is American history is easier because fewer centuries. And I say fewer centuries, but not fewer fucking sessions. Sorry,
that's
can I say
true.
that?
Please.
It's
Say more of
material.
it.
It's material for 13 weeks now, or 14 formally. How can it be easier? It's not logical. That sort of gets me a bit.
That's true. I mean, you get to tell 13 to 14 weeks worth of stories. I get to tell
Yeah,
13 to 14
exactly.
weeks worth of stories. And
they have to filter them.
Exactly.
So I don't
So
get...
before we go further into this, does anyone want to explain like how PM2 or PM4 or the histories module is constructed? Like, what is this exam even about? How does it work?
Okay, let me deal with that very quickly. Go to the PM4 Profil2 EKVV entry and look at the How to PM4 PowerPoint. Alternatively, come to the How to PM4 workshop. I'm not going to say it all over again.
Fair.
so, yeah, we got at least as far
and
as...
the module description.
Oh,
Like, it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. It really is. And aside from that, I mean, in the FSBs, you can even read what exactly you need to do. So there's 5 courses in Profile 2/PM4, the Histories module. People have to take History of the English Language, and they have to take 2 out of the other 4 courses. Some people like to take all history. Some people like to take all literature. Some people like to take all American. Some people like to take all British. And then you'll have strange but wonderful people who like to take something like American history and British literature for whatever reason. But it's completely up to them. It's fine. It doesn't have to be any logical threads between the courses that you choose. Sometimes it's just what fit in my schedule, as you so aptly pointed out earlier, Leon. So there's that. And then you've got your 3 courses and your 7 minutes per course in the exam, which is an oral exam. But if you want more lovely details, I mean, we've got someone who's been through the exam. We've got someone preparing for the exam, basically.
Yeah.
That was not very enthusiastic.
I am a lonely warrior.
So maybe we should talk to Kate and ask Kate, like, what's your experience so far preparing for this exam?
Well, I did the history of the English language last semester, and it was my, 4th, 5th attempt to finish the course, and I managed to finish it, and I managed to hand in my Studienleistung, so I'm good to go.
Did you take it so many times because the course is so hard, or what was going on
I would
there?
always drop right after or just before the Great Vowel Shift. That's like the baseline. And it's not because it was boring or something. It's just I just never felt like it. But now I understand. Like I did my BM3, and now it all falls into place.
Okay.
And I understand. It's like a puzzle.
Yeah.
And this is what Michael Wenka said to me when. And then I also took a course on spread of English, and now I understand even more. So yeah, I'm getting more and more information and understanding.
Footnote: don't do hotel before you've done BM3.
Yes. Thank you for telling that. And everyone told me that, like even my friends would tell me that, but it's like, yeah, whatever, I'm just gonna try and do that. And yeah. No.
Yeah, it's built on another. Like if you do BM3 first, you learn everything you need to know to then place hotel on top of this gained knowledge. If you do it the other way around, you have no foundation, which is what I did, and which is why which is why I was really scared of hotel. I did fine, but I had to do way more groundwork at first just to understand hotel. Like I went into hotel with people that did BM3, and they were like, yeah, this all makes sense. I'm like, this is Egyptian what you're talking about. I have no idea what this is on. Like, I don't know what you're talking about at all.
Well, I had a class on linguistics, but it was for German linguistics. And I would say it's not the same, but it's still linguistics, and I had the basics for that, and it wasn't hard for me to understand things. I just wasn't feeling that, and then now I'm feeling it way more, and I think it's also the lack of motivation that I had for a long time after Corona and during the Corona. So now I'm back. Yeah. And
Nice.
I've got also my Studienleistung already for the American history this semester, and I just need to finish the journal for American literature.
Okay.
And then I can take the exam.
Mhm.
Whether I can take the exam, it's another question, but I'll try.
Any study groups helping you out there? Tutorials that you're visiting?
As I said, A Lonely Warrior. Oh, yeah, no, wait. Bow and Cable, best book, study companion for history of the English language.
You're going to have to explain.
There is a book that's called History of the English Language by Bow and Cable, and it's a very good read for, and the study companion especially is very good for studying for the history of the English language in general. So yeah, and if you want to have an overview about things that happened, like a shorter overview for the history of the English language, there is also a great book by Andreas H. Juka, I think. And it's also called History of the English Language in the Introduction. So yeah, those books.
I want to mention that I gave you all my notes for this
And
exam,
Leon's
and you
notes.
didn't mention them.
And Leon's notes.
Any help? No, not at all. I'm completely.
And if you're taking the exam with Gramley, then the History of the English Language by Gramley. Yeah.
Sure. Fair enough. So,
you mentioned at a very far back, you mentioned Bridgerton, because a tendency I notice with students is they're like, hey, I just watch these 5 shows that is somehow related to British or American history, and then I know everything. Does that work?
Yes, with John Adams.
I think there's actually a lot of great historical fiction out there that gives you at least the broad strokes of the historical events that are going on. I mean, John Adams is one in particular, but there's lots. Turn is this series about American spies during the Revolutionary War. Fantastic show. And it also gives you I was just referring to it. I was teaching last Friday for a course about New York, and New York is the base of the British during the American Revolutionary War. So there's all these spies sneaking into New York and trying to do stuff. Very nice. But Hamilton, especially if we're talking about the American Revolution, there's so much out there, just so much.
The thing is, it really makes sense if you have the historical context and then you watch the thing, and then you can make the connections. That's why I do recommend that people watch stuff, but just watching it's like just watching Blackadder isn't going to do it. But knowing a little bit about history and then watching Blackadder and getting the jokes,
Absolutely.
that's totally going to stick in your brain, and you'll be able to reproduce that. So I think just watching is not a good idea, particularly with documentaries where you then, if you don't know, you can't assess if it's a good documentary or a crap one.
Also, you end up with very selective knowledge if you only have like those, like not fiction, but those sources, because then you have like, oh, I know a lot about New York, but nothing about the context around certain events.
Sure.
And for me, I was very into Hamilton, and I didn't study it for American history at first, so I really liked Hamilton, which got me into American history. So the motivation led into me researching a lot, and then after I've done all my research, all my work, and then I could enjoy Hamilton again with new eyes. So it's like this circle of like motivation, learning more, and then re-listening or re-experiencing whatever you liked before.
And I think that's exactly it. It takes time. Like that's the perfect way to do it, I think, because you're sort of covering history and literature at the same time. But as you say, you watch this, you do the research, you then watch it again, you make connections. It does take time, and you do get a lot of credit points for the, for the lecture, for the module. But it's only really going to work, I think, if you invest the time. I think we can always tell if people just memorize the slides or whatever it is, and it comes across, sort of mechanical, and these people also usually are not able to then transfer knowledge. But this organic growth of, I'm interested in this, I'm looking up this, I'm going back, now I get it. That's the perfect way to do it.
Definitely.
So a little bit of hermeneutic circle, watching something, then reading up, and then watching again.
Or sitting in the class and reading the textbook along with the seminar, and then looking back on those things that we just talked about. This is also something helpful. I don't know, Leon. I think there's a question that you wrote down here that I feel like is probably a really good one.
One of them is good. Okay, which one?
I like number 2. It's a preference question.
Oh yeah, right. I wrote down like, what is your favorite period and historical event that is part of the Brit history segment or seminar?
Oh, how long you got? Okay. I literally start almost every week, like every session, by saying this is my favorite bit.
Oh, okay.
And it's usually true. So it's like, when I'm in it and when I'm preparing it and sort of reading through it again before the session, I really enjoy doing the lecture, and every week I sort of think this is the best bit. So I can't say.
Can I just ask, if you're into week 8 of teaching British history, what is then your favorite event, if you can recollect?
Very
that?
specific.
Wow.
Yeah. Because if it's for every lecture there is a certain event that is Angela's favorite, then maybe just the 7th.
just dip the toe in somewhere.
Yeah, just pick one.
I don't know what I do in week.
Or the very first one.
7.
The very first week, I think.
Well, the very first week is just the overview over the semester, but the second week is where I start, and I start with the Ice Age.
The Ice Age.
I literally start at the beginning. Yeah. I basically start when the ice melts and Britain becomes an island. Because, we don't think of it as not an island. So I start by explaining how it became an island and when and who migrated there. This whole thing about migration is really important with the British Isles, of course. I really like talking about Stonehenge, that kind of stuff. Because remember, British history for tourists and teachers. And if you go there, then what is still there? What can you still see? And also the Brits are so in love with their history that things like Stonehenge are just, are there stone circles or any kind of circles in Germany? I had to look that up. I have no idea. You don't know, but everybody knows about Stonehenge. And it's just more sort of woven into the fabric of sort of national identity. So, I start there, but I stop with Napoleon. And probably my favorite period is the late 18th century.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
If I had to pick one.
I actually was reading today about Napoleon and his brother Jérôme, I don't know why. It just happened. It just happened. The fact that he is. Oh yeah, because they have now they have something dealing with the guy from.
It was TikTok.
No, it was Heinrich the 13th, I think, the guy that they is a Reichsbürger, and it was on the news that they started like an entire thing, and then I went down the rabbit hole tracking down all his family, and he's actually a member of part of the Queen Beatrice from Netherlands.
Oh my.
Yeah, he's part of that family actually, and also somehow he's part of the Napoleon, and that's why I was reading about Napoleon and Jerome and everyone else.
I never want to hear again that you don't have time for something. Like when I get the message, I didn't have time for this. I'm like, I don't believe you.
And he was married to the queen, and they were actually ruling here in the Westphalia region. That was the interesting thing about that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's the I don't know if you know, like from sort of where we are to, if you go to Schrettinghausen,
yeah,
there's a cafe, the Mühlhorst Cafe. It's a huge old farm, and they have this cafe there and everything. And there's an early medieval foundations of a nunnery across the field and everything. It's a really old part of Bielefeld. And they have this plaque on the stable door saying that the German-French border used to run along that field, which you can see there, which is so weird, which obviously goes back to when Westphalia
Here in
was...
Bielefeld?
Yes. Yes, the French came this far east. We were part of the Westphalian king was one of, probably also a brother or something, I don't know.
Yeah. He was actually ruling over the Westphalia region. Yeah.
The more you know.
Yeah. It's amazing, right?
I don't like this fact.
Just goes to show, you go far enough back, you're in a different country, even if you stay put,
Yeah, tell that to Poland.
Yeah, for example. Yes, Europe. You all have been doing so many wonderful things for so many years, and we get to teach about it.
I don't know if wonderful is the correct.
That's the fair criticism of my statement. All right. Good. And I guess maybe just to round off the profile to PM4, the histories module. Kate, as someone going into this test, are you nervous about anything? Are you curious about anything? Like, you are speaking for our audience member.
Kate slumping in her chair.
Oh, well.
Despair in her eyes.
Am I afraid of the teachers? I'd say no. Am I afraid of the exam? I don't know, because I've never done it before.
Mm-hmm.
And talking is actually my strong thing, or something that I can. Because everything that I will put on paper will stay on paper. And I can always be pinned down for it. But when I say something, I can always correct myself and,
Or deny.
Exactly. And there always will be the thing that one of the lecturers may do. Are you sure about it? And then I can pick up the cue and say, well, actually, I want to reconsider my answer.
Or you double down.
Well, I'm not Leon, so...
I was going to say, to varied success.
So
talk to someone before. I mean,
right.
Tell someone. If you're not in a study group, you have to nonetheless say, talk to your cat or whatever. Explain to your cat about John Brown. Well... I had one student...
Talk to Leon. He's much like a cat in many ways.
I had one student who said she literally stood in front of a mirror and told herself. But you have to speak.
Yeah.
Otherwise... Yeah.
Oh, well, most of the time I have those talks in my head that I do where I think that I could say something smart and then it doesn't come.
No, it's not the same though. Like I had that myself, or like I read it to me, or like I had it on cards, but it's still different if you explain it to someone in person, because if you don't read it off somewhere, you have to formulate it. And really doing that sticks. So next time you have to explain to someone, you remember how you explained it. And it's becoming easier.
Mm.
Those neurological pathways have built themselves. The synapses know where to go in your brain. Fair enough. Was it Demosthenes who put pebbles in his mouth and spoke at the sea? I'm trying to remember. It was one of those old Roman/Greek guys who tried to overcome a stutter in the same way. But I think speaking definitely is helpful just to get it out somehow.
Yeah, and you learn to, if it's like the great vowel shift, it's sort of, and it's about mouth and it's a vowel. Oh no, just the long vowels. Huh? But if you speak it, then you have to say one sentence after the other. And that's really important, because then if somebody says to me, so the great vowel shift, that's my first sentence. And that's the road I take into the topic. And that's where you lose time in the exam. We think, great vowel shift, hey, I know that, except now I don't know how to start. And that's valuable time lost. That's
True.
why the speaking of it is so important.
I think especially with hotel, it's important that you speak it, because if you want to explain something linguistically, you need to know how to say it, not just read it on paper. You need to, if something changes in pronunciation, you need to say how it was pronounced before and after. And for that, you have to try to at least make those sounds.
For sure, and it helps in a linguistics course to know the linguistic terminology to describe something as well as give examples. I think this is something that people often forget, there are examples, and like you just said, you have to say how it sounded before and after. That's an example. Give 1, give 2, give 3, and see where that leads you. I think those are definitely things you see again and again in the exam. As examiners, we're there for our 1/3 of the conversation, and then we just kind of zone out for a while. And we've heard these questions a million times from our colleagues. But we have to take notes at least for half of that 14 minutes.
What are the most often questions that you have heard in the exam?
Nice
I'm gonna
try,
write
young.
down.
Nice try.
Nice try, young Kate.
I think the bottom line is it's everything we've already been saying.
Yeah.
Like none of this is surprise. Nobody comes to surprise you at these exams.
I don't know who said it, but like the best tip I ever got for any oral exam is it's okay to not know something.
Sure.
Because you can at least give a hint, like, hey, I'm not sure about this segment. And then you could hint at like, but I know about this and this. And then the lecturer, if they're nice, can ask a question
If they are nice.
about whatever you talked about. Like, because it is, in the end, it's a conversation. You just don't sit there and say, the answer to this is A, the answer to this is B, the answer to this is C, but it's a somewhat of a conversation. So, and
Sure.
they hopefully want you to be able to show what you know.
That's right.
Because that's what the exam is about.
Because we want to turn your conversation into a conversation.
I have a dream to be able to know
one day.
material that good so that I can come to the exam and just look straight in the eyes and tell to the examiner, fight me, Brian.
Fight me.
Yeah, I love that meme.
You leave out, sorry if I can, there is this step that we haven't talked about, but that's also really important. You're usually given a choice.
Yeah.
You're usually handed you pick a slip of paper out of a pile, or you're given a card with 3 options on it, and you have to know what you know.
Right.
And we do get this, that people say, oh, I'm going for the restoration or something, and then they can't really say anything much about the restoration. And we think, that's not good, because we interpret this to mean this is my good subject. And if this is what you produce on your good subject, then it's a good thing you didn't choose any of the others, but we assume they'd be even worse. And that's obviously then not, so you can totally say pass, but if you keep saying pass on the topic that you picked, no, that's not so good.
Yeah.
Very true.
So again, the quick thinking, the knowing, okay, that one definitely not. I'll go for that one because I know I've prepped that one.
Is there a certain grid how you actually grade students?
You're not going to get answers to these questions.
No, because there are certain things that maybe are supposed to be there. Like for example, for LPT, you are supposed to have those signpostings. Is there something that is?
Well, in history of the English language, if you don't know the periods of the English language with dates, beginning, end dates, so that's bad.
That's bad.
For sure. And I also think, and here we're speaking out of school because it's not exactly our course to teach, but we've heard the exam a million times. History of the English language. Know that great vowel shift, folks.
Yeah.
Know what an analytic and a synthetic language are and where English happens to be on that scale during those periods. These are things that come up again and again. But I think for our parts, for British history, for American history, it's like you've got a choice. Like you choose something and you just dive in. I mean, I kind of, for American history, keep people in the colonial period for that first choice, and then we kind of go forward chronologically from there. But it could be anywhere in the colonial period, depending on which cards you draw. But again, I give you 3 different options. I expect at least one of those to sit somewhere.
I think for me, I listened to like a podcast that was a lot about the history of slavery. So I just came to the exam like, I want to talk about slavery. Let's go.
I mean, that's a good start because I could say, okay, I've got colonial questions, I've got revolutionary questions, I've got, antebellum questions.
Yeah, I had my red line for all the periods.
Yeah.
Don't use terms in order to impress us that you can't define.
Oh, yeah.
Because it will happen that somebody will then say, oh, you just used the word Puritan. What was a Puritan? Yeah, and then you go, oh, shit. Yeah.
That's right. And if it's Puritan, then you better know the distinction between the Puritans I talk about in American history and the Puritans that may come up in British history. And there's 2 different kinds of Puritans I might talk about in U.S. history. So that's already...
P and lower P.
There you go. Still got it.
Cool. I don't know what they are. I know that they exist.
It's at least a start. I'll take that. What was it my Latin professor used to always say? If you throw enough shit against the barn door, eventually some of it's going to stick. So I've always imagined my job as an educator as a shit thrower. And, you see what sticks.
Barn door constructed out of students.
Sometimes you've got good aim, and sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's the door's fault. Sometimes it's your fault.
I think I made a PowerPoint about studying, study advice once, and I chose for that not the barn door, but kids playing on the beach, and they had ice cream all over them and sand, and they were covered. And I said, this is how you have to come out. You go in clean and pristine and everything, but at the end of the day on the beach you have to have all sorts of things sticking to you. That's the aim. Which is maybe a slightly nicer, I don't know.
Well, what are you going to do?
But it's the same idea.
Yeah. And my Latin professor was an old Benedictine monk, and I don't think nice was on his agenda, I'll be honest. He was more about, you will learn here. And that was pretty much it.
Was it at school or?
No, it was college.
It was college. Okay.
Yeah, I went to a Catholic college. Don't worry about it.
Did they also beat you in college?
No, they saved that for elementary school. But again, that's a topic for a different day.
Welcome to Brian's therapy. That's the thing.
Yeah. No, that's just a statement of fact. It's not therapy yet until I get over it. At any rate, I think we've probably covered about as much PM4 profile to the histories module as we're going to. Anybody who wants more information, you can check our show notes. We'll give you some lovely links to all sorts of material that you can follow to get those how-to workshop notes, slides, etc. And be sure to check the AKFAFAO for the tutorial, something we haven't talked a whole lot about, but it does exist and it does help people. So check that out as well. At any rate, then, this is Brian, along with Leon, Kate, and Angela saying bye, folks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you next time.
Give you a try. If you do well, you can go a long way. But if you fail,
The producers pledge that they will produce
you
only
can go a long way
recordings
too.
which will contribute to your musical enjoyment and successfully meet your high-quality standards.
This episode of Anglisten Assemble was privately produced as a joint nonprofit informational project of students and staff at the beautiful Bielefeld University. All views and opinions expressed on the show in no way reflect the official views of the university and are solely the perspectives of our hosts and guests. Information provided is true to the best of our knowledge at the time of production, but this is naturally subject to change as some details are time sensitive. Anglisten Assemble is produced and edited by Kate Lee, Leon Dalashel, and Brian Rosema for the private use of our quality audience. If you want to get updates and further info about Anglisten Assemble, check out our Insta at anglisten.assemble. And if you're enjoying what you hear, Throw us a 5-star review on Spotify. Those help us spread the word and get more Anglisten to join the assembly. Musical accompaniment today includes the sonic stylings of music from allesgamerfrei.de. And finally, we'd like to thank our special guest today, the amiably adroit Angela Stock.